Hello, welcome to Wherever I Lay My Hat, which is a podcast about home. Today's guest is newly published English author Martina Gruppo, and she's the writer of Hello Flower, which you can find on Amazon, and I'll include some links to that in the show notes. That's her life story, detailing the decade she spent with a covert narcissist, and includes details of her expat life in Italy, France, and Nicaragua, as well as detailing her experiences with bereavement and cancer. Sometimes funny, often self-deprecating, which I think is the Englishness, and more often than not, brutally honest. I'm excited to have Martina on today to discuss what home means to her. So Martina, again, thank you so much for joining us. I'd love to hear a little bit sort of about you, a bit of background, kind of how you found home or not so far, and obviously a little bit about kind of your book and the story of your life would be great to hear.
Okay. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me on, and it's lovely to hear an English accent as well. I was born in the north of England and raised in the south. So I still say nothing, but the rest of my accent, you can pretty much, point down to the south of England.
They
I
moved
was
you the right
lucky.
direction, is what we're saying.
I don't know. I quite like going back, sometimes that people are so wonderful in the north of England that it's just, anyway. I don't want to alienate any part of anyone here. So I was really, really lucky, and I grew up in Bath in the south and southwest. Beautiful city, totally spoilt for choice. My mum, who was from Ireland, ensured that we often went back to Ireland. My dad died when I was 2.5, my birth father, if you like, and I was raised by my stepfather, an amazing man, absolutely fantastic. But because of the Italian roots, we would often go back to Italy to visit family and, people over there. So travel, in the days when travel was great, we're talking a long time ago, where you'd get on a plane and it would be exciting and there would be boiled sweets in basket and that kind of thing, or you were taken out to the cockpit. Yes, that's how old I am. That kind of stuff. It was fascinating. And I kind of took it naturally. I wasn't afraid of getting on planes at a time when most of my classmates were going, on holiday to the beach, Brighton, Blackpool, those kind of places. It wasn't, or Cornwall. It wasn't really considered to be the thing to go abroad. It was very, very much at the beginning. And I think that sort of ignites something in you. I think when you find trouble when you're very young, that easy, and it certainly stops you being afraid of new things. You know that you can do this kind of thing. You know that you can go there. I didn't go on skiing holidays or anything like that, but I was pretty much determined by the time I finished school, sort of, and I got to around and after my A levels, that I really, really wanted to go and live in Italy. This was my be all and end all, which is what the book talks about. And I did actually try and go, because my idea at that time, you have loads of these ridiculous ideas, was to start up a creche. And I wanted to be speaking loads of languages and then come back to Bath and open up an international creche. That was my idea. Loved kids, loved travel, loved speaking languages, even though I wasn't, there yet. And of course, life really does sort of twist it all around for you, doesn't it? And say,
Yep.
no, actually, this is what I'm going to do. You're not coming back. You're not having kids. And that's how we're going to work it out for you. Anyway, when I was in Rome the first time, I wasn't supposed to be in Rome. I was actually supposed to go to France initially. That fell through. And then, I don't know, serendipity, something like that, fate, destiny, or just bad luck, made me end up in Rome. And which was good because I was with an abusive boyfriend back in England. So it was good to get out, and to do something different, physically abusive. And when I went to Rome, it felt as though I had grown up again, but not grown up. It felt as though I was given a key to have fun.
Mhm.
And that city in the late 80s was phenomenal. It's nothing like it is now. It's very sanitized and generic and that kind of thing. But oh my goodness, back then it was perfect stomping ground to fall in love. And along he came eventually, and I felt head over heels in love. This was the person I was going to be with for the rest of my life. Only, yes. So it was a very, very difficult relationship. No, that's not true at all. Sorry, I just such starting to feel really sorry.
You jumped into the future a little bit there.
Sure, I'm just thinking about him then, and then I thought, no. Initially, and he was the be all and end all, and I felt that we had the most incredible lifestyle, or it seemed as though we had, from the outside. And when you're young and in your 20s, I mean, everything works, doesn't it?
Right.
It doesn't really matter what you do or how you do it. And you believe so solidly that everything you're doing is right.
We also don't have the life experience to tell you otherwise, right? And that's the thing is, if you've not experienced different things, you don't know whether this is normal or not normal, because you only operate within your own frame of reference and your own experiences, right? So I think you hear a lot of people in their 20s and stuff like, oh, I got this wrong. Well, of course you do. That's life, right? You get things wrong. That's how you learn new things, mistakes.
It's also why when they, I wouldn't want to go back then, but I would want to go back there knowing what I know now. That old thing that everybody says. I mean, I envy their use of men and things like that. And you wish back then that you knew what you actually were like. But I had a pretty good time. I can't complain. It was amazing, and I really did. But even because I have this inbuilt thing in me that I needed a degree. I needed a career path. I needed to find something. It's all very well flitty from part-time job to part-time job. But at some point, even if I didn't want to grow up, I wanted to, well, I described it in the book as I wanted to have choices. That's what I wanted.
Perfect.
And he didn't want to come with me. He thought, no, this isn't for me. That's too much like growing up. But at the time, I figured that was all my fault. So I thought, oh no, I've got this person and I'm now deciding to go off and do a university degree and he's not coming with me. I've ruined us. So I buried my head in the sand for about 20 years and I went off. I was heartbroken. It was awful, the first few years. And of course, I'm going to say this to you, but as a woman, what you do as a female, you just think, oh, I really screwed that up. I really messed that up. That was my one chance at love and happiness. And it never materialized. So I was living back in England and I did what I think was expected of me. I married an okay-ish Essex boy. I graduated. I got a reasonable job. And I just remember painting one in this new house that we bought and we were doing up and things like that. I remember painting the walls and one of my best friends was in Australia traveling around or Southeast Asia. And I could almost feel this feeling inside of real, is this it?
Mm-hmm.
And I think when we force ourselves to settle down, that's when things, the cracks start to appear.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel that, it wasn't that I didn't feel I was ready because I wanted children and I wanted, to stay there. But I also was really like, really me, in the middle of Surrey, Greenbelt, at 30. And now I look back and I'm like, oh my God, I was only like 30, 32, something like that. And I feel so young, when I look back and I think of my age. But at the time, I was just, oh, yeah, I think this is awful. I didn't do anything because, again, stick it out. Let's see what's going to happen. Lots of things happened, affairs on his side and infertility. So the marriage came to an end and I was heartbroken because I wanted children more than anything. But I remember that I was sorting out a room in that particular house and painting it for a lodger to move in, and getting ready. I remember a friend of mine, he came around and he said to me, God, you could go anywhere. He said, anywhere at all. He said, you've got nothing. He said, you've got the house here rented out. He said, there is literally nothing stopping you. And I thought, yeah, actually, let's really think about this. So I started making moves to teach English as learn that, I got the TESOL, teach English to students of other languages. I started looking around at volunteering positions because for me, the be all and end all would be being in a place where there were children. And originally I was thinking about going to the Burmese border, but went out with, my lovely dad, he was like, well, yeah, it's a bit dangerous at the moment. So Nicaragua was the other one.
I have to say, that doesn't sound that much less dangerous in my head. But
yeah, there's been a revolution and things like that. But I was just like, and again, you're there and you're just thinking, oh, I'll be all right. And I'll find a way and I'll make this happen. And I did everything. And within 6 months, I had the qualification. I'd set up the thing that I was going to this cloud forest, the northern Nicaraguan mountains. And there's a really funny bit in the book, and I've been quoted it before in magazines, things like that. While I was hanging out at the chicken bus on my way up through this kind of jungle, in the middle of nowhere with petrol cans and live chickens and people staring and not understanding a word of the language. What's the part of me that would just go, God, I could have gone to bloody France or why did I choose? Sorry to use this is very Italian expression, but why did I choose the arse end of nowhere to help people do this? And you talk about trying back. I don't know. There was a couple of things that happened while I was in Nicaragua. The very first evening I arrived, I put my hand into the breeze block building room that they showed me into with the wooden shutters and the mosquito net. And I went to turn the light on. Massive rookie mistake. No electricity, obviously. And I sat on the bed and cried. And then I had a word with myself and just said, no, you decided to come here. No, you work it out. You give it a couple of weeks. You've got nobody to blame but yourself. So, do it. I think I was there for 5 months initially, and then I got dysentery. And I felt my best friend came to see me, and then she flew home, and I was homesick. And I had a dream. I had a really vivid dream that night about going back home. And I dreamt I was walking down the high street in, suburban Surrey. And I met, I could see other people that I knew then. I was like, oh, hi, how are you? And then they were very dismissive, like, oh, yeah, I'm fine. I've got stuff to do. And I woke up the next morning going, no, you can't go back. Nobody's interested. Everybody's getting on with their own lives. You need to sort of create something here. So I did. I created a cottage industry with the coffee farmers. And that sort of led to, if I went over there, I think it was in 2000 and, oh gosh, I can't remember the exact year, but I ran my own entirely ethical coffee business. I was the one who was shipping. I cut out the middleman and talked to the farmers, built schools, did that sort of stuff. So I was coming backwards and forwards to Nicaragua for probably the best part of 10 years.
It's pretty incredible. And I think if I look at that, and this is a theme that comes up quite often when I'm talking to people about this, is that it's the what if moments, right? It's that, do I decide to stay? Do I go? Do I not? Do I, take a risk? Don't I take a risk? Not every decision, but most decisions are reversible, right? If it doesn't work, I can come home. If it doesn't work, I can do this.
Yeah.
I think people that travel or people that live overseas, like we have, that's often the thing, right? That's the driving force. It's that, well, if it doesn't work, I can come back. But if I don't try it, I'm going to regret not trying. There's going to be something that's going to eat away at me if I don't try the thing.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think that you're in one camp or the other. You're either in the camp where, right, I'm going to stick this out, I'm going to make this happen, I'm going to do this. Or there is another camp, it's like, oh my God. I remember some people expressed an interest in coming over there. And they said, but how do you wash? And I was like, oh God, I can't explain. You shouldn't come to a cloud forest, and it was very sort of, they weren't friends of mine, they were people who were interested in volunteering. And I thought, if those are your questions already, then there is something that I'm not sure I can, I'm not sure it'd be a good idea if you come and have a cold bucket shower in the middle of a cloud forest. I loved it. I mean, I really, really loved it. And I, moved around quite a lot and met a lot of people. And I've had some really lousy times, really difficult times. Anyway, as a whole other conversation, I came back. But it was during my time, let's say, going backwards and forwards between Nicaragua, that the, what should we call him? Okay, well, the original big love of my life came back into my life.
Okay.
And I was in Nicaragua and, sorting out coffee and things like that. And this email came through. And I think my legs just gave away because I'd failed miserably in relationships. I wasn't, happy, and I couldn't, internet dating had become this really huge thing. I just couldn't get my head around any of it, and I didn't like it. And I think I have met somebody, but I wasn't in the right frame of mind for that person. So I probably lost him. He's probably, that was his lucky break. But I've got quite a lot of baggage. But I then, I don't know, when I saw the email, I think I lifted upon it as, this is my opportunity now. This is my turn to be happy, have what everybody else is talking about. I couldn't have been more wrong. I really.
And I think that talks to that, and I don't want to I'm definitely not in any kind of counselor or psychologist in this, but it's that, the one that got away piece, that whole, I get a second shot, I get a second chance, I get another go at this. And I think, there's always going to be temptation to that, no matter what happens in life.
And you know what? Look, on that exact thing, the guy that I'd met before on the dating thing, where we were not in the right place to be with each other, I'm almost pleased it ended, because if I had been with him and I had given it a go, and then he'd come out of nowhere, sorry, let me just put that a different way, and then he crawled out from under his rock and sent me an email, okay, I would have dropped the other guy at a moment's notice to go with him. So I'm almost, pleased that it didn't happen that way round. Although exactly what you've just said, that it worked so against me, because that need to make it happen meant that I stuck it out for 11 years,
Weird.
Even though it nearly destroyed me. So, I mean, and then, crikey, then we lived in quite a few countries. Oh, I forgot to tell you that all of this is happening. I sold my house back in England, talking about home and where home is. And I know that this is, I love the idea of what, what is the idea of a home. But even when I came back from Nicaragua after I'd been there for a year, I lived with a French girl. And we spoke in French all the time. She didn't speak English, and my Spanish wasn't good enough at that point. And so we spoke in French all the time. And I loved how patriotic she was. And, and this appears sound bonkers. I sold up my house in Surrey and bought a place. And I just figured, and I fell in love with it. It was a converted stable. It was amazing. And it was probably the worst village I could have bought it in, because it was in the middle of nowhere. But I did. And you're just always so convinced, this is right. This is right. This is the right thing to do. And I wanted to invest my money into solid bricks and mortar and not just spend it. Anyway, so we got back together. And this time he was willing to move to the UK to be with me. So we moved. I found us a place. And this was after a year of us being together and me going backwards and forwards to Italy. And he didn't have very much in Italy, which should have been a massive warning sign. So I took on the responsibility of making sure that everything was going to be amazing for the two of us. And that meant finding a home, and that meant me being the only one working because they are very, very good. Narcissists are very, very good at making you feel as though it is literally none of their fault.
Yeah.
Nothing is their fault. It's, they're waterproof.
Well, that's one of
So,
the problems with narcissists, right? Is that they actually believe that. It's not even that they don't necessarily, it's not even necessarily at that point a fake thing that they're putting on. They have that long held belief that, well, they're right and everyone else has to accept that. And it's that whole
yeah, do you know,
manipulation piece is just awful.
yeah, that's a really tough one because and I'm not correcting you.
Oh,
Okay,
feel free
you're
to correct
right.
me. Again, no
No,
training
no,
rules at all. Shh.
they do have an inherent belief that they're right, but that almost sounds, and you're probably not, as if they're being excused for the
Oh,
way that they
no,
are.
not at all.
Oh, no.
No,
Oh, okay.
no,
All right.
no, not excusing that at all. I think it doesn't matter that they think they're right. Then there still needs to be a level of empathy to accept that other people's opinions matter. And they're not incapable of those feelings. Right. And I think that's the thing. And I think there's you can get into that whole debate where, with psychopath, sociopath and empathy and the ability to feel it and present yourself as something that you're not. And I think that just because you feel something doesn't make it right. And certainly the impact you are able to observe the impact your behavior is having on somebody else, regardless as to whether you think you're right or not. And if you're causing somebody else pain, you have to examine that. And I think that's where that doesn't happen. And that's the intensely evil part of it.
It's like dealing with a toddler.
Yeah.
The toddler wants what the toddler wants. Okay. And nobody else, although a toddler is probably kind their own shared stories and things like that if you teach it properly. But it's exactly what you said, that there's no accountability, but then add into that mix because he was nasty. I mean, not initially, but he was so good at what he was doing. The manipulation was so vile and intense that I took everything on.
Yep.
My fault. This is entirely my fault. And all he had to do was say, look, I'm here for you. I've come all the way over. I've left my country. I'm here for you. And I was straight back to where I'd been 25 years earlier, and I don't know. We were together for 11 years. We got married stupidly. And in that time, I did have breast cancer and went through chemo. And after that, I think he then became very fed up, even though I was a great wingman, because this is a guy who probably in 11 years work won. If you added all the little bitty jobs together. And after the cancer, I mean, how good it was. We need to move back to Italy where the food is good for you and the sunshine is great. And yeah. No, he wanted to move back to Italy because he was fed up with England. He'd done England. And so we did. But, he didn't do any of the moving. He just split it up and left me to pack up. And I mean, it beggars belief how many times in the time that I was with him, it was me packing boxes and moving yet again and again and again. Since I've been with him, and I could say I'm not an authority on Italian, but I've pretty much lived in the south, in the middle, and in the north. And I did keep moving because I was, because we had to look for work or, it's all in the book, the way that, once again, and there was even, I won't spoil that, but I don't think I've ever been afraid of moving. And then, my dad died. My mum had already died, and then my dad died in 2020. And by now I was a wreck. Because they are a bit like, I don't know if you've ever read any of Harry Potter, but in Harry Potter, the Dementors suck the energy of people. That's what they are. That's exactly what they are. I mean, it's almost like I must tell you, Daniel, I've got a Substack page. Okay. You don't have to read anything or anything like that on it, but there is a blog post I've written called Take the Photo. If you go down to it, you'll see the house that I saw 3 years ago and bought because my dad had died and he persuaded me, we need a house here. This is where you should buy it. And I thought this was our forever home for our Great Dane, for everything. Who's sadly also gone. And in that video, it's only 3 minutes, 3 or 4 minutes or something like that. It shows exactly what a narcissist does to you.
Yeah.
And it shows how I created a home. Okay. So there was this, this sort of villa on its own. It was all tumbled down, hadn't been touched in 50 odd years. And I'm so excited. I couldn't wait to get my hands on it. I couldn't wait to start doing things. And I came in and, I did it. And in the video, it's as though somebody's turned the light back on in me when you see it in July of this year. And you see how I've made a home. Now I'm going to give you the shocker. Okay. Well, so I left him in 2022, at the beginning of 2022. I stayed here in the house because I have my really big dog, and that's his big dog. He didn't want the dog. And I looked after him until he died last year. And I think I pretty much got to the end of my tether, generally the way of life here, because it's not all it's cracked up to be by any stretch of the imagination.
And nowhere is, right? I think that's everywhere you go, there's a compromise, right? And I think that's one of the things I want to explore with you on that, right? If it doesn't feel like home, all the things that would be a minor irritant somewhere else become a major irritant where you are.
Well, the language, I speak the language, but people are out to get you here, literally out to get you. So in July, I decided that I wanted to sell up. Madness, that my house is beautiful. I have it exactly the way I wanted it. And I've always been okay about it. And I run a little bed and breakfast out of here and everything else until about a month ago, when I was in bed and somebody was drilling holes in the French window trying to get in.
Yeah, that's not good. That's an instant way to not feel safe where you are.
Yeah. So I woke up to find an intruder just about to put a wire through the door and open the thing. And everything changed for me.
Yeah.
Everything in that instance. Before I thought, well, if I'm here for another year, I'll see about what I'm doing. Now, I just want to be gone.
Yeah, and I understand. I got burgled when I was in New Zealand. We fortunately weren't home, but you never felt comfortable in that place again. And I think it's the violation as much as anything else, because your home is supposed to be your safe place. And if you feel like someone can enter that place at any moment, then it's never going to feel like home. So just kind of...
I felt bad people looking after me because I'd gone to bed ridiculously early. So when I heard the strange noise, I woke up and didn't just go straight back to sleep.
Yep.
And when I crept out to see, and I saw him on the other side, saw them on the other side, the fear of something like that is so intense that I'm still quite scared in the dark. A month on. And what it does is it's a chemical reaction. It's just like, no, people saying to me, oh my God, but you're beautiful home. What is the point? What is the point? I'd rather be living in a much smaller place. I can always go out. I know what I'm capable of. And that will lead on to how do you make a home?
Yeah. And I think that's an interesting thing to touch on based on that. Right. And I think that I'd like to explore that a little bit. So one of the things that we talked about over email very briefly is what's next, and not necessarily knowing what's next because of this situation now that's happened. What do you feel? What are you looking for? I suppose is the next question. What are you looking for in a home? What is home going to mean to you going forward?
Well, it's changed somewhat since the attempted break-in, because I was pretty fearless before. Now it's looking like a place where I would like to have neighbours. People probably in a place which is a little bit more, it doesn't have to be massively, populated or anything like that, but I need people around me. That's one. The second one is I want a writing room. But that's really what I want. I want to carry on writing. because I love it. I absolutely love it. And I want to move to somewhere where I feel comfortable. And I think I might have found it. So I'm going to be moving to Wexford in Ireland.
Beautiful part of the world.
Yeah. Well, it's where I'm from originally. So yeah.
I think there's a really interesting kind of statement you've made around that, because that talks to two different parts of home, right? One is the comfort, the feeling that, that I'm from here, this is my home, this is, the comfort of the surroundings. So I think when you spend a long time overseas, that can get blurred because, one of the things I talk about quite often is England will always be home because that's in some way because I'm from there, but I can't ever see myself moving back there in any way, shape or form. It will never be my home in terms of comfort and feeling. I can absolutely see myself moving back to New Zealand as I get older and being retired there, because that's where that probably feels, the most homely place to me.
Why is that?
I think it's because for me, I think it's because I grew up there. That sounds odd because I moved there when I was 22, but I spent, 23 years of most of my adult life. And I think that's when you actually do most of your growing up,
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. And I think, you're that whole you talked about in your story, this, the things you do in your early 20s versus what you're doing, and I'm in my mid to late 40s now. And it's very, very different in terms of what becomes important, what's a priority. And I think I spent, most of my adult life living a long way away from family, and regardless of relationships and, add-on families and things like that. Your family's still your family. And I was a very long way away from mine. And so you build your own, in a lot of that, so I built my own family, friendship groups and people I'm very close with that I consider, friends I'd consider a brother, and I love my sister, my real sister to bits, and I love my mum and dad to bits. But that's also, that's a family that I was given, which I'm very grateful for. But I've also built my own family, which is in New Zealand. So I think that's also why that is always a pull to me as well. But I also think that when you look at kind of the options that you make, some of the other things you talked about, and I think this does get shaped by the experience you have, the physical nature of the home is important for it as well. And I think that does change. I look at what you're saying, obviously you were broken into and that was a violation and you've had some really, not pleasant experiences in a home. So the physical things become more important in a lot of ways because it's, these locks, these doors, this safety that I build around me becomes much more important than if I hadn't experienced those things. So it is interesting that home becomes a blend. It's not just one or the other. It's not just the emotional feeling or just the feeling of safety. It is also the physical things you surround yourself with, whether that's the locks and doors and windows or the favorite desk that you've got in your writing room that makes you feel creative, whether that's, having the right size TV on the wall to watch sport, if that's super important to you. It's that physical manifestation of what you need to feel safe and feel comfortable and feel happy.
But it's also, what I found really gratifying is I had a really good friend that came over and I just said, she said, "Oh, your home is so beautiful." She's been 3 or 4 times, but then she looked at me and she said, "But you'll make anywhere you go beautiful." And I just thought, actually, it's fine. It's just things. If I've got a dozen plants, I'll be happy wherever I'm living. If I've got a little bit of a view or I can go out and walk to the beach, I will be happy. And I can do all of that. And I think I found the right place. And I agree with you. I love England. You can take me out, but you can't take England out of me. And there are certain things that I will always, always do and be. And I feel a real connection to that place. And I love going back and seeing my friends there. But I have some really wonderful people in Ireland, family, not close family, but they've become incredibly close and incredibly supportive. And I can't wait. It's just so lovely to think. And I know, oh my God, I can't tell you, Daniel, the idea of packing up and moving and trying to organize bloody thing, relocation all the way across 2 countries, I'm just not relishing it at all. But I'm for it.
Yeah.
Because the end is so incredible. So, yeah.
And I think that's a really good point. Like when my wife and I and our little daughter moved from New Zealand to the US, we looked at, do we pack up a container? Do we bring stuff? We moved with 7 suitcases and 3 carry-overs. We moved, you know, and that's, 20 years of life for me there, 13 for my wife. And we just decided we weren't going to bring anything. We'll bring clothes, we'll bring the basics, we'll bring a lot of stuff for baby. But for us, it was like, they're just material things. And all of the material things for us weren't the important thing. It was where we were going to end up and the people we were going to end up with and the environment that we were going to build. And material things come and go. There's there's absolutely some sentimental material things that we brought with us. But the big things like a couch or a chair or a table.
Oh, no, no. Yeah, no. But then you see, I've got a very sentimental bureau belonging to my dad that is just like the centerpiece. So I'm kind of thinking, well, if I'm going to take that back, I might sort of think of that table and chairs and things like that.
Oh, and I get that. Yeah. And everyone's different, right? Everyone is different in terms of those things that are important. And that's part of the thing about what we do to make home. Well, thank you so much. I think that's probably a good time to wrap up, Martina. And I really appreciate you sharing out your story. I think that's, it's very inspiring in many ways because there's a lot of adversities that you faced and come out smiling and come out telling a story and come out with a goal and a desire to go forward, which I think is, super important. So again, thank you so much for your time. It's really very much appreciated.
Thank you. It's been great.
And again, as usual, please don't hesitate to follow, subscribe, like, comment, reviews on all the various platforms that we have wherever I lay my hat on. So obviously Apple Music, podcasts, YouTube, Amazon, all the usual places that you would find things. But also, most importantly, if you feel you've got a great story to tell or have strong opinions around home, we'd love to have you on the show and discuss, because this is a podcast about people and about their stories. It's not me waffling on for an hour. It's about hearing other people's stories. So really do reach out and let us know. We'd love to have you on. Again, thank you so much, Martina.
Thank you.